Kwa Yada Yahweh Tsabaoth Akkad. Shalom. So I'm going to be reading some scripture. Basically going to be story time, minimal commentary on scriptures directly talking about the Torah. So the scriptures that I'm going to be reading is Habakkuk, Pesher, the entire book of Habakkuk, and the entire book of Joel. If you guys want to read them on your own, you're more than welcome to. You could pause it at the page. I'll try to show the scripture, and then you could read it on your own, fast forward. However you want to do it, I'll read it for you. Whatever. All right, so let's just get it. So Habakkuk, Pesher. I'm just gonna read through the fragments. I'm gonna try to pause for the blanks and the stuff a little bit, but just bear with it. It is what it is. Oracle received by the prophet Habakkuk in a vision. For how long, Yahweh, do I ask for help without you hearing me? Do I shout violence to you without you saving me? The interpretation of this concerns the beginning of the generation, which will come upon them. They will shout against. Why do you show me misdeeds, and do you behold toil? The interpretation of this, of God with persecution and betrayal. You set destruction and violence in front of me, and brawls occur, and quarrels arise. The interpretation of this, robbery of, and brawls, argument, and they think destruction, for the law falls into abeyance. The interpretation of this, that they have rejected the law of God, and justice does not emerge as the winner, for the evildoer accosts the upright man. Its interpretation, the evildoer is the wicked priest, and the upright man is the teacher of righteousness. This is why justice emerges distorted. The interpretation of this, and not, look, traitors, and behold, be astonished, shocked, for in a time a work is done which you would not believe. You would not believe if it was reported. The interpretation of the words concerns the traitor with the man of the lie, since they do not believe in the words of the teacher of righteousness from the mouth of God, and it concerns the traitors of the new covenant, since they did not believe in the covenant of God and dishonored his holy name. Likewise, the interpretation of the word concerns the traitors in the last days. They are violators of the covenant and will not believe when they hear all that is going to happen to the final generation from the mouth of the priest whom God has placed within the community to foretell the fulfillment of all the words of his servants the prophets, by means of whom God has declared all that is going to happen to his people Israel. For see, I will mobilize the Chaldeans, a cruel and determined people. Its interpretation concerns the Kittim, who are swift and powerful in battle to slay many. In the kingdom of the Kittim, they will take possession of many countries and will not believe in the precepts of God. They will go across the earth to take possessions of dwellings not theirs. Its interpretation, and they will advance over the plain to destroy and pillage the cities of the country. For this is what he said, to take possession of dwellings not theirs. It is dreadful and terrible. His judgment and his exaltation arise from himself. The interpretation concerns the Kittim, the fear and dread of whom are on all the peoples. All their thoughts are premeditated to do evil, and with cunning and treachery they behave towards all the nations. Their horses are swifter than panthers. They are keener than wolves at night. Their war horses paw the ground. gallop from afar. They come flying like an eagle, hastening to eat. All of them come to use violence. The breath of their faces is like the east wind. Its interpretation concerns the Kittim, who trample the land with their horses and their animals, and come from far off, from their islands of the sea, to devour all the nations like an eagle. Insatiable, with fury they are heated, and with burning wrath and livid faces they will speak to all the nations, for this is what he has said. The breath of their faces is like the east wind, and he gathers captives like sand. Its interpretation, at kings. It sneers, and leaders it mocks. Its interpretation, they deride the powerful and despise the honored men. At kings and princes they jeer, and sneer at a huge army. And he laughs at every strong fortress, piles up earth and captures it. The interpretation concerns the leaders of the Kittim, who despise the fortresses of the peoples, and with derision laugh at them. They surround them with a huge army to capture them, and through dread and fear they surrender to their hands. And they demolish them because of the wickedness of those who dwell in them. Then the wind changes and goes on, and this one has made his might his God. Its interpretation concerns the leaders of the Kittim, who on the advice of the house of guilty people go by one before the other. Their leaders, one after another, will come to raise the earth. And this one has made his might his God. Its interpretation, all the nations, are you not from old, Yahweh, my holy God? We will not die, Yahweh. You have appointed him to judge, Rock. You have installed him to rebuke him. Your eyes are too pure to look at evil. You cannot stare at calamity. The interpretation of the word, God is not to destroy his nation at the hands of the peoples, but in the hand of his chosen ones. God will place the judgment over all the peoples, and by their reproof all the evildoers of his people will be pronounced guilty. By the reproof of those who kept his commandments will be pronounced commandments in their hardship. For this is what he has said. Your eyes are too pure to look at evil. Its interpretation, they have not run after the desire of their eyes in the era of wickedness. Why do you stare, traitors, and remain silent when a wicked person consumes someone more upright than himself? Its interpretation concerns the house of Absalom and the members of their council, who kept silent when the teacher of righteousness was rebuked, and did not help him against the man of the lie, who rejected the law in the midst of their whole council. You made man like fish of the sea, like a reptile to rule over it. All of them he hauls up with his fish hook, catches in his net, and gathers in his trawl. This is why he offers sacrifices to his net. This is why his portion is fat and his food rich. I skipped a little part. This is why he offers sacrifices to his net. This is why he rejoices and is happy and burns incense to his trawl, since by them his portion is made fat and his food rich. Of the Kittim, and they gather their wealth with all their loot, like fish of the sea. And what it says, this is why he offers sacrifices to his net and burns incense to his trawl. Its interpretation, they offer sacrifices to their standards, and their weapons are the object of their worship, since by them his portion is fat and his food rich. Its interpretation: they distribute their yoke and their burden, which is their food, among all the peoples year after year. Year after year, ravaging many countries. For this he continually unsheathes his sword, to kill peoples without pity. Its interpretation concerns the Kittim, who will cause many to die by the edge of the sword: youths, old people, women, and children. Not even children at the breast will they pity. I will stand firm in my sentry post. I will position myself in my fortress, and I will look out to see what he says to me, and what he answers to my reproof. Yahweh answered me and said, write this vision, inscribe it on tablets, so that may run. Inscribe it on tablets so that may run the one who reads it. And God told Habakkuk to write what was going to happen to the last generation, but he did not let him know the consummation of the era. And as for what he says, so they may run the ones who read it, its interpretation concerns the teacher of righteousness, to whom God has made known all the mysteries of the words of his servants the prophets. For the vision has an appointed time, and it will have an end and not fail. Its interpretation: the final age will be extended and go beyond all that the prophets says. Beyond all that the prophets say, because the mysteries of God are wonderful. Though it might tarry, wait for it. It definitely has to come, and it will not delay. Its interpretation concerns the men of truth, those who observe the law, whose hands will not desert the service of truth when the final age is extended beyond them, because all the ages of God will come at the right time, as he established for them in the mysteries of his prudence. See, it is conceited and does not give way, his soul within him. Its interpretation: they will double upon them and find no mercy and being judged, but the righteous man will live because of their loyalty to him. Its interpretation concerns all observing the law in the house of Judah, whom God will free from the house of judgment on account of their toil and of their loyalty to the teacher of righteousness. Surely wealth will corrupt the boaster, and not will he last. He who widens his throat like the abyss, and he, like death, cannot be satisfied. All the peoples ally against him. All the nations come together against him. Are they not all going to chant verses against him, explaining riddles at his expense? They shall say, one who amasses the wealth of others, how long will he load himself with debts? The interpretation concerns the wicked priest, who was called loyal at the start of his office. However, when he ruled over Israel, his heart became proud. He deserted God and betrayed the laws for the sake of riches, and he robbed and hoarded wealth from the violent men who had rebelled against God. And he seized public money, incurring additional serious sin, and he performed repulsive acts by every type of defiling impurity. Will not suddenly your creditors get up, and those who shake you wake up? You will be their prey. Since you pillage many peoples, all the rest of the nations will pillage you. The interpretation of the word concerns the priests who rebelled the precepts of God, afflicting him with the punishments of sin. the horrors, terrifying melodies they have acted upon him, as well as vengeful acts on his fleshly body. And what it says, since you pillaged many people, all the rest of the nations will pillage you. Its interpretation concerns the last priests of Jerusalem, who will accumulate riches and loot from plundering the nations. However, in the last days, their riches and their loot will be given into the hands of the army of the Kittim, for they are the rest of the nations. For the human blood spill and the violence done to the country, the city, and all who dwell in it. Its interpretation concerns the wicked priest, whom for the wickedness against the teacher of righteousness and the members of his council, God delivered into the hands of his enemies to disgrace him, with a punishment to destroy him, with bitterness of soul for having acted wickedly against his elect. Woe to anyone putting ill-gotten gains in his house, placing his perch high up to escape the power of evil. You have planned things that will bring disgrace to your house, destroying many nations and sinning against your soul. For the stone will shout from the wall, and the wooden beam will answer. The interpretation of the word concerns the priest who, for its stones to be by oppression, and the beam of its wood by pillage. And what it says, destroying many nations and sinning against your soul. Its interpretation is the house of judgment, for God will give his judgment among many nations, and from there will lead him to punishment. And in their midst he will proclaim him guilty and will punish him with sulfurous fire. Let's go. Woe to him who builds a city with blood and founds a town on wickedness. Does this not stem from Yahweh Tsebaoth, that the nations wear themselves out for fire and the peoples are exhausted for nothing? The interpretation of the word concerns the spreader of the lie, who has misdirected many, building a useless city with blood and erecting a community with deceit. For his own glory, wearing out many by useless work and teaching them acts of deceit, so that their labors are for nothing, so that those who derided and insulted God's chosen will go to the punishment of fire. For the earth will become full of the knowledge of Yahweh's glory, just as water fills the sea. The interpretation concerns the interpretation of the word in his return. The lie. Afterwards, knowledge will be revealed to them as plentiful as the water in the sea. Woe to anyone making his companion drunk, spilling out his anger, or even making him drunk to look at their festivals. Its interpretation concerns the wicked priest who pursued the teacher of righteousness to consume him with the heat of his anger in the placement of his banishment. In festival time, during the rest of the Day of Atonement. Atonement. He appeared to them to consume them and to make them fall on the day of fasting, the Sabbath of their rest. You are more glutted with disgrace than with glory. Drink up also and stagger. The cup of Yahweh's right hand will turn against you, and disgrace come upon your glory. Its interpretation concerns the priest whose disgrace exceeded his glory, because he did not circumcise the foreskin of his heart, and he walks and has walked on the paths of excessiveness to slake his thirst. But the cup of God's anger will consume him, increasing his disgrace and the pain. For the violence of Lebanon will cover you, and the destruction of animals will appall you. owing to the human blood and violence done to the country, the city, and all who dwell there. The interpretation of the word concerns the wicked priest, to pay him the reward for what he did to the poor, because Lebanon is the council of the community, and the animals are the simple folk of Judah. Those who observe the law, God will sentence him. Okay, I mixed that sentence. Because Lebanon is the council of the community, and the animals are the simple folk of Judah, those who observe the law. God will sentence him to destruction exactly as he intended to destroy the poor. And as for what he says, owing to the blood of the city and the violence done to the country, its interpretation, the city is Jerusalem, in which the wicked priests performed repulsive acts and defiled the sanctuary of God. The violence done to the country are the cities of Judah, which he plundered of the possessions of the poor. What use is the sculpture which the craftsman carves, or the cast effigy and sham oracle, in whom their craftsmen trust, to make dumb idols? The interpretation of the word concerns all the idols of the peoples which they made to serve them and to bow down for them, but they will not save them on the day of judgment. Woe, woe to anyone saying to wood, wake up, and to a silent stone, get up. Can it instruct? It is covered with gold and silver, but no spirit at all is therein, but Yahweh is in his holy temple. Silence in his presence, all the world. Its interpretation concerns all the peoples which serve stone and wood. However, on the day of judgment, God will destroy all the worshippers of idols, and the wicked from the earth.